my fellow teammate, Navid Mansourian. We've been working together as part of the Public Relations Committee. Navid has been a student of Gathas of Zarathustra's teaching for 25 years. He currently serves on the California Zoroastrian Center Public Relations Committee, helping people who'd like to learn more about the Zoroastrian philosophy. And with that, I ask Navid to take over. This meeting is being recorded. Briefly, at the end of the talk, we will have a little bit of time for questions and answers. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat box. We're going to limit each question to no longer than 2 minutes and 1 question per participant, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fariba John, and good afternoon or good evening for you all, depending on where you are. I'm Navid. Pleasure to see all of your beautiful smiling faces. Excited to learn together today. I'm going to talk for about 20-25 minutes, as Fariba John just mentioned, and then we'll dive into a Q&A. So let me get started by sharing my screen. Can everyone see this all right? Cool, wonderful. So I'm very excited to dive in to our second talk today. I've been thinking about these talks as a thought catalyst. So building off of the first one, where we gave a general overview of Mazda Yasna per the Gathas, we're going to now dive deeper into the divine attributes, a framework for realizing the divine and self-realization, starting with Asha and Bahumana today. And as the entire purpose of the teachings in the Gathas encourage each individual to think for oneself and utilize our good mind in search of the ultimate truth, the goal of this presentation is to serve as a thought catalyst and spur discussion. So this is, hoping this gets us to a point where we're just talking and learning from each other, and that's the goal for today's session. So I'll talk for a brief period of time, give a general overview of what I've learned from the Gathas, and I would love to then follow up with some questions together. Sound good? Great. How many of you have heard of this threefold mantra before? Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. It's familiar, right? I think we often use this as the simple overview of what Zarathustra's message is telling us, right? And if we think about this, what does good really mean? The good matters a lot here, right? And when we say good, when we think about the languages we speak today, and in English in particular, good means a lot of different things. It's rather wide-ranging and complex. It can mean everything from bountiful and fertile, like good land, you see in this table here. It could be suitable, like good to eat, something that's free from injury or disease, like a good arm. It can be reliable, or something that's well-founded and cogent, like good reasons. It also includes meanings like kind, benevolence, true, something that's true, something that's virtuous. So something that holds good for a larger group, a good person, good intentions. We use a lot of these different terms to think about good. And today we want to talk about this more together. So in Mazda Yasna, good is defined as an intrinsic goodness, but more importantly, in relation to the foundational concept of Asha, often translated as truth or righteousness. Wonderful overview of the core message of Zarathustra and the Gathas. I love Dina McIntyre's framing here, and thank you so much to her for joining us here today. But in essence, if we look at the overall message and go deeper than good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, we see that the teachings tell us that throughout our lives, we are confronted by choices, and that we should use our minds and hearts to search for Asha, for the truth, for what is right and good in all aspects of our reality. Then choose it with every thought, word, and action by engaging the world actively, not rejecting it or withdrawing or staying to ourselves. And this then grows ourselves spiritually, perfects our world, and until we realize the divine, we become one with the divine, until we become part of the endless lights. So again, here we see the search for Asha matters a lot. So another recap from the last talk, just to get us going and thinking about, reminding us about some core concepts here. When we think about the teachings in the Gathas, Zarathustra's philosophy is constructed on 6 abstract concepts, and they all build off of Asha. So Asha is the foundational component, in my opinion. These are divine attributes of Ahura Mazda, but also a framework through which the divine is known and realized. So starting with Asha, ultimate truth, this is the ideal, correct, entirely good order of existence in both mind and matter. Just going to give a quick overview here, and we're going to dive in deeper into the first 2 especially. Vahumana is next, where this is the comprehension of Asha and recognizing the disparity between what is ideal and the real. It is our instrument of moral cognition, and some might say our conscience. Then you have the embodiment of Asha, Spenta Armaiti. Us looking at Asha, comprehending it, then embodying it in our own thoughts, words, and deeds. And this is characterized by us leading. When we are aligned in embodying Asha, it leads to benevolence, to serenity, to peace, to calm, to many beautiful, beautiful results. Then we have Vahu the good rule, the rule of Asha. It's when we are now, through comprehending and embodying Asha, we are now governing ourselves individually and collectively by Asha, thus creating the ideal society, being aligned and fully compatible with Asha, which leads us to Harvatat, completeness. This is the complete attainment of Asha, perfectly and completely for all existence. So not just for yourself, for all existence. And this is a really key point that we see over and over again in Zarathustra's teachings. Realizing the divine completely and progressing all of existence makes us whole. And this results in Amaratat, the state of immortal bliss, where we transcend mortal existence. We have progressed or realized the divine, if you will, and become part of the endless lights. This beautiful metaphor that I love from the Gathas, where we're thinking about the enlightenment, the bliss that comes from being one with the divine. So as we hear all of these attributes, again, we can really see that this is all building off of Asha. So if we think back about our purpose, evolving spiritually by searching for Asha, by comprehending it, by embodying it, and being aligned with it, this leads us to enlightenment. It leads us to wholeness and to the divine. So what then is Asha? And this is the point, the major topic of our talk today. We're going to dive in deeper together. So Asha literally means what fits. It is the foundational concept, as we talked about, upon which Zarathustra's philosophy is constructed. In Avestan, the word Asha literally means what fits. But what fits is unique. It's what fits as in the correct truth of how things fit and how things are ordered in a system. It is linguistically related to the Sanskrit artha and Old Persian artha, which translate as truth. And as I was mentioning, when we look at translating this in many different, with one single word, like truth, righteousness, universal order, and law, it is challenging to encompass all the meanings of Asha in this one word. So I'd like you all to please keep that in mind as we keep talking this through. And this will be the focus for our talk today, is to really dive into this topic and learn more together. From my view, Asha is the ultimate truth. It's the entirely good, correct, ideal order of existence as envisioned by Ahura Mazda. It is the relationship of all things in perfect harmony in both existences of matter and mind. So let's learn more together. In the Gathas, we know the divine is the source of all goodness. And the creation that Ahura Mazda conceives of in his wisdom is called Asha. It is a perfect ideal existence, and the mental ideal is then actualized in the world of matter. Now, Zarathustra views the existences of mind and matter as two complementary parts of our reality. Mortal existence, combining these two, is the matrix for which our spiritual growth happens, where we learn. And we could look at free will, we look at what we experience, and we learn from this. And the spiritual growth comes from the search for Asha, for truth, in both dimensions, the physical and material, and the mental and spiritual. But what is truth? How do we seek it? The answer in the Gathas is clear. Vahumana. Vahumana, the good mind, is our intrinsic ability to comprehend and understand Asha. And when we look at Gathas, Yasna 28.7, we see this very clearly. Grant me, O truth, the blessing which is the fruit of the good mind. So here Asha is truth in this translation from DJ Urani, and good mind is Vahumana, of course. So we see that Asha is the blessing, is the fruit of Vahumana. So let's think a little bit more and talk a bit more about Vahumana. The Avestan Vahu translates as good, with a focus on intrinsic goodness, something that is good in itself. Mana translates more as mind or thinking. Good is in reference to Asha, like we briefly mentioned earlier, the entirely good, correct order of existence. Throughout the Gathas, we see Asha accompanies Vahumana and vice versa. They're generally coupled and following each other throughout the Gathas in a beautiful partnership, if you will. Vahumana is then our ability to comprehend Asha. It is an attribute and activity of the divine, but also of humankind. So if we look at Gathas Yasna 28.2, this is also clear again. O wise Lord, by virtue of the good mind, may I reach thy presence. Grant me the blessings in both worlds, the corporeal and the spiritual, attainable through righteousness. Thy rewards which bring beatific happiness to the faithful blessed with them. So here we have righteousness, the translation for Asha in this translation, and good mind is Vahumana. So by virtue of the good mind of Vahumana, and attain is how we arrive at Asha. So Vahumana is the construment of moral cognition. It enables us to understand what fits in the ideal, correct, entirely good existences of mind and matter. So that is our ability to comprehend Asha in relation to our own thoughts, words, and deeds, thus enabling us to partner with the divine in improving, perfecting, and healing existence. So how do we know if we have found Asha or that we are aligned with it? Love to look into the Gathas a little bit more for insights and clues. And remember, when we talk about the teachings in the Gathas, there's always this combination of the existences of mind and matter. So it's important to keep this in mind, no pun intended, as we learn more about Asha. So in the physical world, in the existence of matter, Asha is truth. It is what is accurate about our physical existence. The laws that govern the universe, physics, chemistry, biology, astronomy, factual truths. And as a result, when we study these things, we see harmony, we see balance. Asha is evolving, in my opinion, refreshing. And it's the universal law of our physical existence. It's something that we are constantly striving to understand better, right? It's not something that is static and stopped, right? We're constantly trying to understand how this works. And by the way, I wanted to quickly plug Dina McIntyre's outstanding work on Asha. There's an article linked here. I'll include all the resources and acknowledgements of references in the deck. For anyone who's interested, you can email pr@ccc.org. But there is a wonderfully detailed bit of work on Asha with references to all the Gatha verses and a much deeper analysis on Asha. And that's where a lot of these specifics can go back to as a useful reference. Now, as we dive into the spiritual world or the abstract world, this gets more complicated in a lot of ways because what is, true or right for me might be different than for you and for anyone else. And this is where there's some really important principles to think in mind. Asha is what is right and what the best good, but for all existence, not just for one individual. It is the relationship of all things in perfect harmony, such that nothing occurs at the expense of something else. This is amazingly relevant to today's existence and to all time, in my opinion, right? This includes such notions as social justice, something very important in our day and age today, and also speaks to the interconnectedness of all life. So let's dive a little bit more into some other attributes. Asha is righteousness, as we mentioned. It is the right thing to do, but again, for all existence. It is described as the best good, beneficial, loving, beneficent. It is the way of the divine and the way to the divine. Asha is happiness, generating peace and tranquility. It is the way to improve, perfect, and heal our existence. Asha is just, not in the punitive justice system of paying someone back for something that they've done wrong or punishing them, but really through learning through cause and effect, expanding our understanding. I believe it is a form of compassion, honestly, us understanding the interconnectedness and the order of all things. It is a form of growth. And what's interesting, I find, is we can learn just as much about what something is by what it is not. And we see some references to the opposite of Asha, or how it is contrasted. And the opposite of Asha is fury, cruelty, violence, destruction, deceit. So again, a lot of these attributes help us to understand what Asha is as this abstract concept. And it's this constant search where we ask ourselves, is this all of these things? Does this check all of these boxes? Which enables us to reflect. As I mentioned in the last talk, a wonderful thought that has stayed with me is my son's comment. I have an almost 8-year-old son, and he referred to these teachings as being a scientist for your own life. And if that scientist for your own life means we're constantly learning, we're constantly reflecting, we're constantly growing. And this is a key part of understanding Asha. So this is how we evolve and we spiritually grow. Now, another way of thinking about Asha is from the foundational mantra or prayer, Ashem Vuhu. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of this. It's one of the most common prayers. And what's key, and this is actually what truly opened up my heart to the teachings in the Gathas, was this core idea that the search for truth, when desired for the sake of truth alone, not because of some reward like going to heaven or receiving something that you wanted, and not for fear of punishment, for fear of a hell or bad karma, but simply because it is the right thing. It is simply for its own sake, that intrinsic goodness that we talked about. That leads to Ushta, is the Avestan word, which is true radiant happiness, an enlightened state of being that naturally radiates to all existence. And what I found really profound here is in my work in the past, I've come across a few social psychologists that were studying happiness. And this is something that keeps getting echoed in studies we see around happiness in modern days. We don't fully understand it yet, but that true happiness is generally coming from someone doing something where they feel very empowered and very purposeful and helping others. And only for that sake, not because of something you were going to get in your own reward or because of a fear paradigm, which is really profound to me, right? Here we have this message from close to 4,000 years ago, and it's being constantly reaffirmed with our modern understanding. So I'd love to leave you with that thought. And let's look at one more insight from the Gathas. So when we look at Gathas, Yasna 44.2, we see this verse. This is translated by DJ Irani as well. This I ask thee, tell me truly, O Ahura, what is the source of the best existence? How shall one who seeks it receive the blessed recompense? Surely such a holy one through righteousness, is a healer of existence, beneficent unto all, a genuine friend, O Mazda. So here again, Asha is being translated as righteousness. And what's amazing is the attribute of through Asha, you are a healer of existence, beneficent unto all, and a genuine friend. So it's interesting when we see these core messages constantly reaffirmed in beautiful poetic verses. And this really does re-emphasize the importance of these points of thinking of all again when we think of Asha. So as we get close to the end of my initial talk, I did want to share a beautiful thought from the Yasna Hapten Gaidi. This is a later text, so not Zarathustra's words, but composed in Gothic Avestan. It gives us a sense of what ancient or older Zoroastrians understood of what Asha meant to them. And I find this quite beautiful. And it says, this is Dina McIntyre's translation, which I think is lovely. We worship, celebrate then the true, correct order of existence, which is most good, which is most beautiful, which is beneficial, non-dying, which is light-filled, which is all good. So here again, we see these thoughts of what Asha is. Asha is most good. Asha is most beautiful. It's such an amazing thought to me when we think about beauty, and that beauty is being compared to this abstract idea of Asha. And Asha is beneficial, non-dying. It always is, and is light-filled. It is all good. Truly a beautiful thought that I'm constantly reflecting on as I think about what Asha means and we try to grow together. So as we're wrapping, I know we talked about a lot of different attributes. I thought this was a quick, nice visual I had put together for us to better understand, or just have a quick recap of Asha and all of its various attributes and ways that we need to seek and understand it. And again, what I find truly amazing about Zarathustra's teachings in Mazda Yasna is it's not a religion of commandments and do's and don'ts, because again, we grow through our free will. We grow through our free will, but also through our reflection, our constant reflection and partnership with others, which is why I'm so excited for talks like this and for the discussion to start soon, where we talk about these qualities, this framework that we just walked through that Zarathustra gives us. And as we reflect and as we work together and as we come together, we can create and heal existence. So I want to thank you all so much for joining us for now. We'll get started with the discussion in just one moment. I did want to briefly mention and then thank, this presentation brings together many various resources and the works of many scholars like Dina McIntyre, the late Dr. Katie Irani, and the late Dr. Ali Jafari. And I'm so grateful for their work. And the deck again will contain links to these resources for anyone who's interested. And wishing you all radiant happiness. And I'm very excited to get started in the discussion together.
Thank you so much, Navid John. This was an enlightening talk, and I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. If we have any questions, can you please type them in the chat box? One question per participant, please, so no one gets left out. Appreciate it. We appreciate all of you joining us today. I know some of you are in Europe and it is 10, 11 or midnight your time. Some are from the East Coast. I'm hoping for some questions.
All right, Rajan, did you want to go through the chat or do you want me to just read through them?
I'm looking at the chat. Hold on a second. Do I see any questions? Yeah, if you go for it, Navid, if you see it, I'm not seeing the questions yet.
course, sure. Let me look through. I think there's a question from Mehdad where he's asking, is Asha different from Asha Vahishta? And this is a really interesting question. I don't think Asha is different than Asha Vahishta. It all depends on how you think about Asha. I think references to Asha, in my opinion, from reading the Gathas, as an entity is not something, I believe it to be more allegorical or more in reference to an abstract concept, as opposed to being a being and there being another being, Asha Vahishta, which we hear about a lot more in later texts. But that is my, my opinion from what I've gathered. And I think, again, I would highly recommend Dina McIntyre's very thorough deep dive into Asha, which kind of goes into a lot of the basic reasonings for this. But when we see all the other ways that Asha is being utilized in the Gathas, it seems very logical to me that this is an allegorical reference.
Navijan, I see a question from Nias here saying, can you expand a little bit on the concept of Asha as it relates to social justice?
Yeah, definitely. The way I think about social justice is that the key phrase we talked about earlier is nothing should benefit at the expense of something else. So no part of the living world should be benefiting at the expense of something else, right? And social justice, I think, really gets at this point of it is not just for one group of people or any specific living being again to really be benefiting at the expense of others. And these ideas of oppression or inequality are effectively very much and very obviously not part of these definitions and attributes we see on Asha. Niaz, if you wanted to expand on the question, though, please also feel free to chime in. No? Okay.
Okay. I have a question here from Ferdosh Mehta. What is the big deal of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds?
You want me to explain?
Go ahead, Ferdosh,
what the question is,
of course,
so that you can answer.
Yeah.
I'll try to do that. I said this as a big deal question, just to wake everybody up. Okay, this is one of those pushing the pendulum type of questions. And what I have all my life, I have understood it, and I'm a teacher of religion, both every age level and everywhere, is that good thoughts, good words, good deeds. It's kind of everybody. I have not come across any religion that teaches bad thoughts, bad words, bad deeds. So why are we so big deal about it? And my understanding, and perhaps you can tell me from your readings, is that we have taken good thoughts, good words, good deeds of how and kind of converted it to what? In that sense that anybody asks you, what does your religion teach? Oh, everybody says, there are people of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Fine. I think the thing is more than that, and is what you have explained in the steps of the Amesha Spentas. Or first, the path of salvation is there. What we need to do is follow Asha, Vahumana, Shatra, Vairya, and all that. And how we do that is with good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Can you help me elaborate on that, please, to understand?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Ferdosh. And I did want to quickly acknowledge, I know there's some folks with hands up as well, and Faribajan's will.
Okay, yes, I know. I have a question from Kenneth. Does Asha encompass Duruj? If Asha is truth, would Asha entail acknowledgement that lies exist?
Really quickly before that, why don't we, I'll come back to Ferdosh's question, and then, but thank you so much, Faribajan. So Ferdosh, to your question, I believe you're absolutely, I agree with your assessment. I think the big deal of good thoughts, good words, good deeds is, I think it's a easy to remember and simple overview for us. But I do not think it is simple in its depth and understanding, which is again how I view the Gathas. I think the Gathas are not very long, but they're so profoundly deep and thought-provoking when you really sit and reflect on them. And I think that was kind of my inspiration for this talk even, right? Is I would talk to a good friend of mine and I would say, that we were in college together many, many years ago, and he'd be like, good thoughts, good words, good deeds. It's like, what does good mean? Good in reference to what? Who decides good? Who's the authority, right? And this is why I was like, well, good for us is in reference to Asha, to this framework, as you eloquently mentioned yourself, Firdosh. And I think that is why it's important. I think the teachings of Zarathustra are encouraging us to be reflective, for us to be reflective, work together, and really strive for active growth. And this is a lot more than a static, good thoughts, good words, good deeds, and we move on. It's really requiring for us to constantly reflect and think through what these things mean.
Okay, I'm trying to go through a mixture of hands raised and chat boxes. So Shide has had her hand up for a while, and Navid Bujwala also has had his hand up. So Shide, go ahead.
Hello, thank you for your beautiful talk. Just one thing I wanted to add to good words, good thoughts, and good deeds. I think that's the path to Asha, if I'm not mistaken, because when you're engaged in those, that's a path to reaching Asha. But other than that, my question was that it seems from your talk, it seems that Zarathustra encourages dialogue, encourages communication, and encourages participation. And that's how you can spread Asha. Am I right? Is that what you were trying to say in your talk as well?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way of framing it. I think there are some ways you can bring about an ideal existence and maybe in other philosophical systems where you withdraw and it's just for you. And I don't think that is compatible with this framework I see in the Gathas. We do need to work together with others. We do need to work together and understand what is ideal, what is good for all existence. Because if we think just for ourselves, what is good, again, it is very, I would say, impossible to really understand and have the compassion and the frame of reference and perspectives we need to truly find the ideal for all existence. And again, this message of Asha is in reference to all existence is very important, I believe. So I think that's a really good point, Shida. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Navid Bujwala.
I wanted to ask about, when we say Asha is something, the right order, etc., that does not hurt anything or anyone. But for example, in the animal world, you have animals that kill each other, in order to eat. Some of them predators, they have to do that. And then human beings also kill animals, in order to eat the meat and, that kind of thing. So how does that reconcile?
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the more complicated and very good questions. It's kind of clearly the physical world does have things that are not, what we would describe as comfortable or good in some ways, for lack of a better word. And I think there's, full honesty, it's something I'm constantly working on and trying to understand better. I think at least what we see, I think there's two thoughts I have from the Gathas. One is that what I find unique about Zarathustra's message is he's not claiming to have answers to absolutely everything. And I think that is really important, right? It's not a revealed religion in my mind where it's like, here's everything, I've documented it all, here are all of the laws, follow the laws. And now you have an army of, religious lawyers who need to then interpret that. He's giving more of a framework. And I think the framework is more focused on human behavior and human choice and ethical perspectives. So which is why is my guess for why these kinds of things are not so directly addressed in the Gathas. And I think the answer to try to understand this more is to apply the attributes that we are seeing that do matter for human beings to our continuous efforts of science and understanding the natural world. I do not think we fully understand the natural world. And again, looking at it at a perspective for all existence, I think that is a different lens that we should think about. But it's a very important, question, Ujwala. And I think I've said this before in some of our PR group conversations, but I think what's important about Mazdayasna and Zoroastrian thought is being very comfortable with not knowing, essentially. And I think this constant search for truth and this constant questioning and asking these questions is a big part of our growth, in my opinion. And I, for one, am still growing and learning and loving that journey.
Thank you.
I have a question here from Bobak. Would you say that Asha is a constant universal reference framework force that harmonizes the universe?
Yeah, that's a really nice way of framing it, Babak. That does resonate with me. I think especially in the physical world. And I think what we are seeing as a system is constantly working to find its, balance or harmony or equilibrium, if you will. And I wonder if that is why we do see things that on an individual level might not be as pleasant or horrible, and frankly, in some cases, but the system is trying to find its balance in a way. Again, I think we're constantly looking to learn, but I like that framing, Babak. I think it's a really nice way of thinking about things. Thank you.
Okay, Niaz, if she's still there, if she wanted to expand on her earlier question, I don't know if she can hear me. She can. Do we have any other questions from anyone?
I think Kenneth had a question earlier, and sorry, I messed up the ordering. My fault earlier.
Okay.
Kenneth, did you want to ask the question?
Oh yeah. So would Asha also encompass Daruj? Like if Asha is truth or that which fits, that which is, well, would that also include the acknowledgement that lies exist? Not that what the lies are trying to represent exist, but that the lie in itself exists.
That's a really interesting way of putting it. I think in the Gathas, it's very clear that the opposite of Asha is Druj or deceit, as I've read it. And I think to your point, the existence of it is a philosophical must because of free will, right? And I think that is part of why we grow and learn. I think my personal view here, if we were programmed as robots with commandments to obey, which is one way to maybe think about it. I have a technical background, so my mind gravitates here. But then you don't learn, right? How do you learn if there's not the possibility of untruth, right? How do you find truth if untruth is not possible? So I think there is this constant search again that is how we evolve and grow. And I think the possibility of untruth certainly must exist. And we see it in our existence as well. It's a really nice way of framing it, Ken. Thank you. Looking through any other questions? I think we got most things from the chat. Does anyone else have a question? I'd like to ask live. Or again, a comment. I meant this to be more of a discussion because we learn from together, and your questions provoke thought for me and hopefully for others as well. So I appreciate all the engagement.
I don't know if you can see the raised hands or not, but Shida had her
I see Faranak Parsi Nejad with raised hands. I see that now.
And Shida had her hand raised. And
Shida, I don't know if that's from earlier and she forgot to put it back down, or I don't know if it's a new question. That's hard to tell.
Well, no, I have a question too after Faranak. So
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Navid John. This is wonderful. I mean, anytime we open the dialogue, it's a good time, right? What I think I see ourselves as an ant looking at an elephant. That's how I see this whole thing, honestly. I mean, everybody has their point of view, and we always judge what's good and bad in our world, and say, "Oh, this is good for me. This is great," and then 10 years later, we find out it's not good for us, right? So I guess what I'm asking is Asha kind of like overpowering our little mind of an ant and really deciding for us, or are we deciding for ourselves?
That's a really great question, Farnak. Thank you so much for asking it. I think it goes really well with someone else who also asked, or something similar. But you had a really nice spin on this. I think the question earlier also was around, can we, do we need other people basically, right? We need to communicate with others to understand Asha. And I think this is the important part, is to your point, we're looking at this maybe from as a piece. If we are a drop of the ocean, but we have the entire ocean within that one drop as well, so maybe think about that. How do we grow that awareness, and how do we build that knowledge and that consciousness? I mean, really, the name Zarathustra chooses is Ena Vangui, right? So like good conscience, or kind of being awake in my interpretation of this, and truly seeing what is and seeing what fits. So I do believe that we don't have that full perspective, as you say, but I do not think that Asha is happening to us and we don't have choice. I think it's very clear, at least to me in the Gathas, that we have choices, and through our choices is how we learn. And even though we don't understand how beneficial or how some things could help us grow at any given moment, I have found it to be amazingly liberating and freeing. And in my personal life, the frame of perspective I guess I've taken on this is, no matter what circumstance, no matter the pain or the joys I go through, there's always something for me to reflect and learn upon. And that kind of frees me from this fear-based paradigm of things constantly happening to me, constantly I'm wanting things to be received or asked for, right? And as Dr. Irani used to say, the technology of beggary, which is a lot of religious systems are built on, which is give me, don't have this happen to me. This has changed my outlook entirely, which is, it's not that Asha happens to us, but Asha is teaching. Asha is expanding my understanding. Through these events occurring, I grow and I learn. At least that's what I'm trying to do personally, but it is hard. And we're constantly struggling and striving to learn more, which I find beautiful at the same time. Again, would love to hear any other thoughts, but thank you, Farnak. That's really cool.
Dolat has a question.
So thank you again. This is fantastic, and thanks for everybody's participation. I guess there are a couple of things that came to mind, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. The whole idea of the animal kingdom and how even the cruelty among us, and also this idea of Doruj or this all being all together. So I'm thinking more of the darker side, more of what's painful, what's difficult, sometimes impossible to bear. It kind of gets included in the picture, and my mind keep going to this idea of endless light that you brought in, and it just feels like it's almost like the dark. It brings the opportunity for the light to come in. So I think about like personally, I've been in denial many times in my life, and denial is a very, very healthy coping mechanism. So it's a blind side, and when I'm ready, I can see it, and it's a moment of and kind of being enlightened and be, kind of the growing edge. So I don't know what your thoughts are about this idea of like, even in the animal kingdom, the idea is like when growth happens, the predators actually show up. So it's an edge of growings as well. So I don't know what you've learned or seen in the teachings. That's more of my perspective and my experience, but I don't have any background on it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Dalet. That's a really well thought out point. I don't have the answer either, to be honest, around why these painful or dark parts exist especially in the natural world. I think the natural world is, the way I really think about that is that we still need to understand it fully and understand how it works. And I think we're constantly looking to do that. I personally tend to spend more of my time with the mental realm, I guess, if you will, of kind of my own choices and my own understanding. And I think you have a really good point that the darkness does give us something to contrast or to compare to or to learn from. I think we do learn from things that are not pleasant. And there is a frame of reference that is helpful there. So I'm just not sure if they always exist is my question I have there, right? Is like, because I think if you there is this thought of there being an ideal that is entirely good, right? And that being really the existence of the divine. So I don't know if in this mortal existence it's ever that, right? Where there is no pain and no suffering or none of these negative or darker parts, but maybe they are, entirely necessary for our growth. But, and to other people's questions and thoughts earlier, maybe we don't have the perspective yet to understand it, but where I think Zoroastrianism differs in beliefs is we should continue to strive to understand that, not say it is outside of our realm of understanding and, take the wheel otherwise, right? So I think that's something I'm always looking for is to understand more. Thank you.
I see my dear Dina McIntyre has her hand raised. Thank you so much for being with us, Dina. We can't hear you. Sorry, Dina, we don't have your voice.
I think it might be muted, Dina. Oh, no, it's not muted.
She's not muted.
No. I want to just take a moment while Dina is working on this, is to thank everyone for these wonderful questions and comments. And the discussion is always my favorite part. This is how we learn together. The talk is kind of a necessary point, I think, just to get us started and being that thought catalyst, as I mentioned earlier. Go ahead, Dina. I think your mic might be on again. Oh, no. I heard something, but not. Sometimes leaving the talk and coming back might open up. Do you want to type out in the chat and we can maybe
Dina, do you want to type in the chat? No, we can't hear you. It's too long, she says, to type it.
Okay. I am bummed. I would have loved to have heard the thoughts.
I know, me too. Me too. Would love to hear what she says.
All right. Any other thoughts or questions? Oh, Ferdosh.
Ferdosh.
Well, if anybody else has any questions, that'll be okay if they go first. I don't mind being the last if time permits.
I don't see any other hands up or anything
I really
else.
don't want to.
I think Niaz has her hand up. Yeah.
Niaz, go ahead. Niaz, please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for this wonderful presentation and gathering this beautiful community. It's nice to see everybody. I kind of want to expand. I know my question earlier was a little vague. It's something I think about often because I am in the space of social justice and human rights work. And I always try to kind of think about this concept of Asha and pursuing truth and not harming others and existing in harmony. How do you bring that from the ideological to kind of the more real, right? And I think one of the things I admire about our faith is that, he doesn't have directives, but those things come in handy sometimes, right? Especially how do we use these kind of like ideological, beautiful concepts in this faith and philosophy to kind of encourage more engagement in social justice and human rights in the younger generation? Because sometimes, you lose them when you talk about these ideological concepts, which we love to talk about, some of us, but I think I want to use it as a more kind of direct tool to channel young generations of Zoroastrians into this work. And I don't know if anyone can answer it, but I'm always grasping at how we can make it a part of our teachings to garner the next generation of advocates in our community, Yeah,
that's an excellent question. It looks like Kenneth has something related to that. Did you want to?
Yeah. In terms of like how to put that to practical use, well, historically we have examples of people like Cyrus the Great. This person I'm going to mention is kind of a controversial figure in Zoroastrianism, but I personally think he was a legitimate Sawashant Mazdak. These were examples of people that were fighting for social justice, that were putting the Gathas into practice. So it's kind of like, while Zarathustra was the mindset, Zarathustra talked about the mindset you got to be in. You could read the Cyropedia by Xenophon, which talks about the life of Cyrus the Great. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be like a Zoroastrian text or anything related to the history of Zoroastrianism, but there are examples of people throughout history who have put good thoughts, good words, and good deeds into action.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ken. I think we do have examples. And I think, Niels, your question, it's also something very near and dear to my heart. I think you have a really good point. And this is part of what we're trying to do, I think, with the PR committee from the CZC. And honestly, what I would love to focus on is, how do we take this message and a lot of these really old, almost 4,000-year-old words, and kind of dissect them down to an essence that people can apply in their lives, right? And because I think these other religions with commandments, that is, to your point, easier. I can tell you, like, don't do this. Here's the way it says this, and now, like, this is why, this part of social justice matters, right? It's much more prescriptive. I think that is a challenge. Again, I think this is the challenge, though, that promotes growth. I think we cannot learn if we were just told this is wrong. And I think these conversations and dialogues are one step in that direction. Another thing I think about doing, or I try to do with my own kids who are pretty young, but I think the CZC also has a Gathas class, I believe Fariba John teaches it for teens. I think really trying to look at these beautiful ideas, concepts, frameworks from the Gathas, and then apply them to our actual lives in examples. I think that's maybe the mechanism that we need to do more. And I would love to get to at some point, is like, hey, I'm experiencing this. Like, okay, now let's get into that specific example and circumstance, and like, how does this help us think about things, right? And how does the teachings in the Gathas help us apply and grow and learn, and what do we learn from it? I think we need probably more dialogue and more interactions that are of that type or that capacity, is my general read on this. And then obviously the historical examples that Ken mentioned can also help us too. But I feel like especially teens are going to want things that are right in front of them and really very specific, and examples that they're dealing with in their lives is my read.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that can I respond for a quick second?
Of course.
I think, yeah, those prescriptions or directives can also be dangerous, of course, right? So that's not what I'm arguing for. But I think this concept of like examples in history, and even just promoting dialogue around not just truth and social justice in the abstract, but, real world issues, racism and, white supremacy and sexual violence against women, and things that the kids are exposed to in their daily lives, and having conversations about these issues in our community and then linking them to these concepts is important. I'm not, I know that in the past summer, for example, I know Fazana did one of their talks around civil rights, and we were talking about some of these issues. And I think it's just really important. Maybe that is a good place to build on, so that we can take these concepts from up here and kind of ground them a little bit for kids who are seeing these issues unfold in real time in our community. So I thank you. I appreciate that.
No, absolutely. It makes complete sense to me. Thank you.
I think Behram Pastaki has his hands up. Go ahead, Behram.
Thank you. I just wanted to address the point made by Niaz and the response about linking the concept of Asha to real world issues. I think she's absolutely on the topic. To get things done, we have to relate to what's happening around us. And if you look at what's happening with white supremacy and the way the Blacks have been treated in the United States where we live, it is a burning issue of social justice. And I would suggest that it's a caste. And I'm getting this idea from this book by a lady called Isabel Wilkerson, who has written a book called The Origins of Our Discontents, Caste. And in that, she looks at the caste system in India. She goes there and researches the caste system in India. Then she goes to Germany and researches the caste system in Germany around the Holocaust and the Nazis. And then she compares that to what's happening in the United States and North America. And I want to end my comment by reading the last paragraph of her epilogue, which ties in what we heard today about the concept of Asha, everything being connected, and bring it down to our real world life. So if you'll indulge me, I'll just read that last paragraph.
Please, thank you.
In a world without caste, being male or female, light or dark, immigrant or native born, would have no bearing on what anyone was perceived as being capable of. In a world without caste, we would all be invested in the well-being of others in our species, if only for our own survival, and recognize that we are in need of one another more than we have been led to believe. We would join forces with indigenous people around the world, raising the alarm as fires rage and glaciers melt. We would see that when others suffer, the collective human body is set back from the progression of our species. A world without caste would set everyone free. That, to me, encompasses what I heard today about Asha. We heard about freedom, we heard about the interconnectedness of everything and everyone, and that until everyone is free, no one is free. And in order to get that mindset, that Vahumana, we have to look at it, as Niaz was saying, from our day-to-day experience. So if you look at the opening sentence of the Gathas, where Geush Urvan is crying out for help, the world is in trouble. I see our world in trouble. It just reflects that. And the answer to that, I think Niaz is spot on. We have to, if we want to engage our community, our teenagers, we have to talk about what's happening around us. So I want to end there with a big thank you for this presentation. I enjoyed it a lot, and I hope you continue doing it.
Thank you, Baron. Appreciate it. On that note, I think we just had Martin Luther King Day, right? So I think one of his quotes is, I believe, what is it? Trying to remember it off the top of my head, but it's, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, right? And absolutely right, and very well said. And thank you, Baron and Niaz, for the question. I think we had a couple other questions that popped up. Are we doing okay on time, Faribajan?
We are, I think, close to wrapping up. There are some comments in the chat box. I'm not seeing questions in the chat box. I think Shide and Ferdosh have their hands up. We just have a couple of more minutes if you want to go ahead, Shide.
Thank you. So in regards to how to apply the concepts of Asha or how to engage the younger generation into what's going on around them, I just have one comment. I work with some young people in my job, and they sometimes complain about this or that. And the first thing I always say, you have so much information at your fingertips. You have the internet. When I was growing up, I didn't have any access to internet. The information was very limited and all that. Just pick something that you're passionate about. And you can even tell this to a 10-year-old. Just pick something you're passionate about and then study more about it and see how it changes as other people manipulate it or have some kind of influence. I just give you an example. I was watching a documentary about sharks last night on public television, and the gentleman who was presenting the documentary and giving a lot of very interesting information about the life of sharks in oceans said, ever since I was a child, I was always mesmerized by sharks. I thought they were powerful, interesting, and all that. He just followed that interest throughout his life, and now he's a shark. He does research and presents so much useful information, not only about the sharks, but only about the state of the oceans in the whole world and its effect on the well-being of the marine life and all that. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Shide.
Thank you, Shide. I think maybe we'll wrap up with the final question from Ferdosh.
Thank you. Still, I am kind of continuing on the concept of the who thought good words, good deeds, where I think the Endaranek, Goftaranek, Kirdaranek, which is translated into English by many, including in the Cyrillic language, is noble thoughts, noble words, noble deeds, which are far more focused even beyond the level of good. And the best way to define the good, we kind of seem to forget about it, which is going on for hundreds of years, and which is the golden rule that is there in every religion. And the golden rule says, do unto others, that is what you would like to do unto yourself. So you just define the good. Or don't do unto others that you don't want others to do unto you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ferdosh.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your active participations. This is how we learn from each other. And thank you so much, Navid, for this very lively talk. And this is the second in our series of talks. The first one was Devotion to Wisdom, and this is Asha, and we hope to continue, and there will be more to follow on divine emanations. The recording of this session will be on the CZC website under the PR Committee. If you can't navigate your way through it, just send us an email at pr@czc.org, and we'll give you directions on how to get there to see the recording. Thank you all very much. Anything else you want to close up with, Navid?
No, just thank you all so much for the discussion and engagement. This is, again, how we learn, and really look forward to continuing these whole forums and these discussions together. So wishing you all Ushta. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.